No one noticed the man in the simple gray hoodie and worn-out jeans as he stepped into the crowded downtown cafe. He didn't look like someone who could own a yacht, let alone a company, and that's exactly how Dominic Wells wanted it. He had built his billion-dollar tech empire from the ground up. But over time, he'd grown tired of fake smiles and yes-men who changed their tone the moment they found out his net worth. Today, he was conducting a little social experiment. No security guards, no limo. It's just him, dressed like an average Joe with a wallet forgotten. On purpose, in the glove compartment of his dusty old Camry. As he approached the counter, he scanned the place with keen eyes, not looking for luxury or style, but for character. That's when he saw her. The young woman behind the register had the kind of face that had known struggle, but still wore kindness like armor. Her name, tag read Ava, and despite the long line, the messed-up espresso machine. And the manager yelling something about supplies, she smiled at every customer like they were the only one who mattered. Dominic stepped forward and ordered a black coffee and a turkey sandwich, adding a cookie at the last second just to see her reaction. She chuckled gently. Sweet tooth. He grinned back. Something like that. The total came to $8.75. Dominic patted his pockets and feigned a sigh. Oh no, I think I left my wallet in the car. Mind if I grab it real quick? Ava looked around. The line behind him grew restless. Her manager caught her eye, motioning to hurry things along. Dominic was about to back away when she said, You know what? Don't worry about it. I got you. He blinked. Really? She nodded. Happens to the best of us. Just pay it forward someday. He watched her swipe her own card to cover his meal. No judgment, no hesitation. Just pure-hearted generosity. That small act hit him harder than any corporate pitch or boardroom deal ever had. Asterisk, he sat at the far end of the cafe and watched as she continued her shift refilling cups, mopping spills, laughing with the old woman who came in just for conversation. She treated everyone the same, whether they wore designer coats or faded uniforms. He asked a few quiet questions to a nearby busboy and learned she worked double shifts 5 days a week, saving for nursing school. Her dad was sick. Her mom had passed years ago. She didn't have much, but she gave like she had plenty. As Dominic sipped his coffee paid for by a girl who probably couldn't afford to splurge on one, herself something inside him shifted. This wasn't just a random girl. This was a woman the world needed to see, and maybe someone he needed to know. Asterisk that night, he couldn't shake her from his thoughts. The next day he came back, but this time wearing a tailored suit and stepping out of a black Bentley. He didn't go inside, sat across the street watching. She was there again, tired but radiant. He waited until her shift ended and approached her just as she stepped outside into the cold wind. Ava. She turned, puzzled. Do I know you? He smiled, holding up the same turkey sandwich. Thought I'd return the favor? Her eyes lit up with recognition, and she laughed. Hey, wallet guy, that's me. But today, I came prepared. He offered her the sandwich and a cup of hot cocoa. She hesitated, then took it. Thinks you didn't have to. Neither. Did you? He replied softly. At night. They sat on a nearby bench and talked. About music, life, dreams. She never asked who he was, never pried into his wealth or status. She treated him like a person, not a prize. For Dominic, it was refreshing. He hadn't felt so human in years. She told him how she wanted to help people, to be the kind of nurse who sat by the bedside when families couldn't. He told her he built computers. Leaving out the billion-dollar empire part, they laughed like old friends when he finally walked. Her to the bus stop, she smiled and said, I'm glad you forgot your wallet. Asterisk back at his penthouse overlooking the skyline, Dominic stared out the window, replaying the evening in his mind. Could someone like her fit into his world, or was it his world that needed to fit into hers? The next morning, he called his assistant and made a decision that would shock his board. He canceled the investor summit, cleared his calendar, and requested something he hadn't used in years: time off. Over the next week, he returned to the cafe every day, sometimes just to see her, other times to sit quietly in the corner, learning how ordinary people lived, how she lived. Each time she welcomed him with a smile and that same kindness. She even invited him to a volunteer event she helped run for local kids. He went, and it changed him. One evening, a customer was short on change and looked embarrassed. Ava once again stepped in with that same magic. Dominic couldn't stay silent anymore. After the cafe closed, he asked her, "Why do you always help people, even when you have so little?" She looked at him, quiet for a moment, then said, "Because I know what it feels like to have nothing. And sometimes the smallest kindness can save a life." That answer stayed with him longer than any business lesson he ever learned. He knew then what he had to do. He would tell her the truth about everything. 3 weeks had passed since Dominic first forgot his wallet, and in those 21 days, something shifted in him, something deeper than admiration or curiosity. Ava had become more than a stranger with a kind heart. She was now the one person who made him feel seen without being measured, and yet he had told her nothing. Not about the high-rises bearing his name, not about the offshore accounts, the private jets, or the magazine covers calling him the silent tycoon. Every night he told himself he'd tell her, every day he chickened out, because a part of him feared that once she knew, the magic between them would vanish, that her smile would change, that she'd look at him not like a man, but like a myth. But fate was done being patient. It happened one cloudy Friday evening. Ava's cafe had closed early due to an electrical issue, and she invited Dominic to join her at the community shelter she volunteered at, feeding the homeless and organizing supplies. He didn't hesitate. He put on an old hoodie and jeans like before, hoping to blend in. But halfway through passing out food, a man at the back of the line looked up from his bowl and shouted, "Wait a sec, I know you. You're that tech guy, you're Dominic Wells." The room went silent. Ava froze. Dominic stood still, caught between 100 pairs of curious eyes, and the only one he truly cared about, hers. He gave a slow nod, then turned to her. "I was going to tell you. I didn't want it to change things." Her eyes darted between the man she thought she knew and the revelation sinking in. "You're a billionaire." He nodded again, softer this time. "Yes, and I still remember the day you bought me lunch when I had forgotten my wallet." Ava took a slow breath. "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because no one ever treats me like you did. With no agenda, no pretense. You didn't care who I was. You just saw a person who needed kindness." He stepped closer. "You reminded me what it means to be human." The moment lingered, thick, with tension, and then Ava turned away and walked out. Dominic didn't follow. He knew she needed space. She had shared her life, her pain, her dreams, all with a man she thought was just a regular guy. And now it felt like betrayal. The next day. She didn't return his calls, or the next. He waited outside the cafe, but she slipped out the back. A week passed, then 2. The silence was brutal. So. He did something bold. He bought the old community center where she volunteered. Quietly, anonymously. Then he rebuilt it from the ground up, modern kitchens, new dorms, job training programs, medical care units. And at the front entrance, he placed a plaque in honor of Ava, the kindness that changed everything. He didn't invite her to the grand opening. Wasn't trying to impress her anymore. He just wanted to make sure the world benefited from the goodness she carried in her heart. But she came anyway. She walked in one morning while Dominic was helping a young boy fix a broken laptop. She stood at the doorway in silence for a while. Before stepping forward, "This was you?" He smiled without looking up. "It was inspired by you." She crossed her arms. "You're not exactly subtle with that plaque." He chuckled. "Maybe I didn't want to be." A pause. Then she asked the question she had been holding back. "Was anything about us real?" He finally met her eyes. "Everything. Every laugh. Every talk. Every moment." Asterisk, she nodded slowly, her expression unreadable. And why didn't you trust me with the truth? Asterisk, I was scared, he said. Honestly scared that if you knew who I was, you'd stop seeing me the way you did. Asterisk, Ava sighed. And I was scared that the guy I met in the hoodie didn't really exist. Asterisk, I do, he said, stepping closer. That's who I am when I'm with you. Not the CEO, not the headlines.
What?
Just me. Asterisk. She looked at him for a long time. And then, with a soft smile, she whispered, then stop hiding. Asterisk, it wasn't a perfect ending, but it was a beginning. Asterisk, from that day forward, they grew together. Ava finished nursing school with a scholarship that mysteriously appeared in her email. Dominic started using his fortune to fund causes that mattered not because of business strategy, because he finally understood real value. Asterisk, he still drove his Bentley. But every Friday night, he showed up to volunteer shifts at the shelter. In jeans and a smile, Ava never asked for grand gestures. But he gave them anyway, quiet ones. Small acts of kindness. It's the same kind she taught him with a coffee and a turkey sandwich. Asterisk, and every now and then, he'd forget his wallet on purpose. Just to see her roll her eyes and say, not again. Story. It had been nearly a year since the day Ava found out who Dominic really was, and yet somehow, life with him still felt real. Not glamorous, not glittering, just honest. She had seen his world now, not from the outside looking in, but from within, and what surprised her most was how much he wanted to change it. Together, they launched community clinics, sponsored after-school programs, and invested in tech startups led by underprivileged youth. Dominic didn't just want to give away money, he wanted to give people dignity, opportunity, hope. But as their lives intertwined more deeply, so did the scrutiny. Whispers began. Online tabloids ran headlines like Coffee Girl captures billionaires, Heart and Barista turned queen, Gold Digger or Cinderella. Ava tried to ignore them, but some stung. And worse, some came from within Dominic's own empire. The board of his company, the advisors who had stood by him for years, were growing restless. She's a distraction, one said. A liability, another muttered. Even Dominic's most trusted partner suggested a prenup before things got too serious, but Dominic didn't flinch. She gave me everything before she knew who I was, he said, slamming his hand on the table. Now, I'll give her everything with no strings attached. Still, the tension grew, and Ava felt it. She wasn't dumb. She saw the stares when she entered a meeting room, the sudden silence when her name came up in interviews. But the final blow came not from the public, but from someone she trusted. Her father, still recovering from years of illness, had been staying in one of the wellness homes Dominic helped fund. One afternoon, Ava arrived early to take him to a checkup, only to find him sitting outside in his wheelchair, tears running down his cheeks. They're moving me, he whispered. Why? She asked. They said, insurance has run out. They said I was never a priority patient, not anymore. Ava's heart dropped. That didn't sound like Dominic. It sounded cold, calculating, corporate. She rushed to call him, confused and panicked, but he didn't answer. He was halfway around the world at a press conference launching a new tech hub in Tokyo. She tried his assistant. Then his coup. Nothing. Just silence. Just distance. That night, she lay awake, unsure of what to think. Was she just a chapter in his Storia phase? Had everything they built together become just another carefully controlled PR move? Was love still enough in a world where power always made the final decision? But Ava didn't stay in silence. The next day, she walked straight into the company's headquarters, her hair pulled back, her spine straight, her heart trembling but firm. She stepped into the boardroom uninvited, a place where suits whispered behind frosted glass and plans were made without her. They all stared as she entered, uncertain whether to greet her or guard themselves. She spoke clearly. Did you move? My father? The CFO stood. Miss, your father was staying under a community sponsorship. The funding shifted. We had no choice. No choice? She fired back. You had every choice. You made the budget. You moved the money. And you didn't even call me. The room remained quiet, cold. Ava stepped forward. Tell Dominic I'm done being his charity project. I'm done being the girl in his shadow. Then she walked out. She didn't go home. She took her father, packed a suitcase, and left. The city altogether, back to a small town where no one knew her name. Back to nursing, back to simplicity, back to herself. It was nearly 2 weeks before Dominic returned when he found out what happened. The earth beneath his feet cracked open. He canceled every meeting, fired 2 board members, shut down the facilities management, but Ava was gone. And this time she wasn't picking up. He tried everything. Emails, voice notes, donations in her name. Nothing worked. Until one night, at 3 a.m., he drove 6 hours to the town where he knew her aunt lived and waited outside the small clinic. It was cold, it was raining, but he didn't care. He waited. For hours. Finally, just after sunrise, she appeared carrying a thermos in scrubs, her face tired but calm. She stopped when she saw him. He looked like a broken man. Not the billionaire, not the icon. Just the boy she once gave a free sandwich. Ava, he said quietly, stepping forward.
Ow.
I didn't know what they did to your dad, I swear. The moment I found out, she raised a hand. Dominic, stop. I'm not angry that you didn't know. I'm heartbroken that your world works this way, that even you couldn't stop it in time. His shoulders dropped. I've spent my life building a world that runs on power, but I'd tear it down in a second if you told me to. A pause. Then he added, but maybe we can build something better together. She looked away, tears welling. I needed to remember who I was without you. He nodded, and I needed to see who I was without you too. And I hated it. A silence lingered until she walked toward him slowly and whispered, I don't want your world, I want ours. He smiled. Not the charming billionaire smile, but the real one. The one only she ever brought out. Months passed, and together they built a new foundation, not of concrete or cash, but of trust. Ava took a new leadership role, not as Dominic's partner, but as the director of impact across all his global initiatives. She rewrote the guidelines for care, for compassion, for how wealth should walk hand in hand with responsibility. Brought empathy to power, and he brought power to empathy. When they finally married, there was no diamond-crusted ballroom or televised ceremony. Just a park, a violin, a few friends. Her father in a wheelchair up front, healthy again, and 2 hands clasped. Not of billionaire and barista, but of 2 people who refused to let the world tell them how love was supposed to work. Today, their story travels the globe, not because of scandal or status or spectacle. It reminds us all of something we forget, that sometimes the greatest wealth is kindness, and the rarest love is the one that survives the fire.